On this day, in 1933, a small collection of weathered bones lay on an examination table within the confines of the city morgue down by the riverbank alongside the Victoria Bridge. Poring over the fragments, taking care to scrutinise every detail in the hope they might give up their secrets, Dr. James Duhigg determined that they were definitely human and likely belonged to a male. Unfortunately, little else could be ascertained from the scant few bones, apart from an estimation they'd been exposed to the environment for some time. On the day previously, Jane Stokes had made her way onto the slopes of Mount Coot-tha, or One Tree Hill as it was still commonly known, with her young daughters Dulcie and Peggy. Living towards the base of the Brisbane landmark, in an isolated farmhouse bordered by bushland, the family were on the lookout for firewood and tinder. Whilst Jane ferreted around in the scrub looking for more substantial timber, the two young girls took the opportunity to do a little impromptu exploring, venturing down into a deep gully a little distance from their mother. Clambering through the rocks and debris that had been deposited over the centuries, the girls were startled to spy an unusual bundle up ahead, seemingly lashed to a log that straddled the ravine. Putting fear to one side, Dulcie shimmied out onto the limb, untying the package and dropping it down to her younger sister. Ecstatic at their special find, the two girls dragged the discovery back up the gully and presented it proudly to their mother. Equally as intrigued at the find, Jane took the bundle in hand, which appeared to be a man's jacket wrapped around something substantial, and began to unwrap the package. The weathered fabric coming apart in her hands, the mystery lump would soon be revealed as a gentleman's portmanteau. Delving deeper, the port was found to contain a neatly rolled gentleman's tie, a pair of trousers, and brown leather dress shoes complete with socks. A small bundle, neatly wrapped in newspaper, revealed a set of false teeth, with the port's remaining contents rounded off with a handful of bullets wrapped carefully in a piece of white rag. The remains of the jacket revealed a handwritten letter, the contents of which were barely discernible on initial examination, and Jane requested that her eldest daughter Dulcie head back down the gully to see if any further clues to the port's owner could be found. Minutes later, Dulcie's voice echoed back that she'd spotted a rope noose hanging from the stump near the port's original location, and with that, Jane took her children back to the farmhouse and alerted her husband to the discovery. Immediately making his way up the slope to the gully, it didn't take long before Sydney Stokes stumbled across a suspicious-looking bone about 20 yards below the offending stump. Nearby, a shoulder bone could also be seen jutting out of the leaf litter. Having seen enough, Sydney returned to the farmhouse and the Toowong police were summoned, arriving on the scene in the afternoon to undertake a more thorough search of the gully. In their endeavours, which stretched into the night, the officers recovered a shin bone, a collarbone, a few ribs, and what appeared to be a finger bone still sporting a thick gold ring inscribed with the letter B. Unable to locate any further remains of what now appeared suspiciously like a human skeleton, the collection of grisly relics were forwarded to the Roma Street Police Station and the city coroner in the hope some light could be thrown on the mystery remains. Referring back to the handwritten letter found within the tattered coat, police made their first breakthrough in the mysterious case. At the very end of what now appeared to be a beautifully written and thoughtful suicide note, penned at the exact location in which the bundle had first been discovered, an unfamiliar name glared out at the officers, that of B.M. Bridger. Systematically working their way back through the previous issues of the Police Gazette, a report was located within the tomes for early 1931, detailing a missing person by the name of Bernard Muir Bridger. Having mysteriously disappeared from his lodgings in Leichhardt Street, Spring Hill, on the 27th of September 1930, the man's worried uncle, Charles Hammond, had written to Brisbane Police from his home in Victoria. With this lead in mind, the Bush letter was sent south to the Victorian Police, who in turn visited the uncle and confirmed a positive match in handwriting with other personal letters the uncle had received from his nephew. However, the question still remained, exactly who was Bernard Muir and how had he ended up in a lonely gully on the slopes of Mount Coot-tha. Subsequent inquiries would uncover the 33-year-old was a native of England. Having enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in September 1914, Bernard had served with the 14th Infantry Battalion at Gallipoli and the 15th Battery within the 13th Field Artillery Brigade through both France and Belgium. Surviving the rigours of war, Bernard returned to Australia in late 1918, eventually making his way to Brisbane, where he offered his services as a gardener to the wealthy property owners around Ascot and New Farm. Very fond of writing and poetry, Bernard penned a number of melancholy pieces, including some about a lost love just prior to his disappearance. However, to the very few who knew him, not one suspected him capable of taking his own life. Bernard's case was closed in August 1933 on the presumption his death had occurred 2.5 years previously. Mentioning in his final letter that, "I meet death as an old acquaintance and meet him with a smile, as I have always tried to meet life's troubles," it can only be surmised that the Gallipoli veteran was suffering from post-traumatic stress as we now understand it, despite the malady being little recognised in the years following the First World War. Unbelievably, Bernard's tragic story would not end here. In June 1934, a year after the inquest before which his remains were tendered as evidence, police were tipped off that a woman's grave in Toowong Cemetery was rumoured to contain more than one body. On exhumation, they discovered poor Bernard's scant remains had been unscrupulously thrown into the same coffin as an unfortunate who'd been buried as a pauper after passing away at the Diamantina Hospital for incurables. Carefully removed and reinterred within the returned soldiers section of the cemetery on the 22nd of June 1934, Bernard was finally afforded the recognition he deserved for his services, and the eternal rest denied him for almost 4 long years.